And passing it on. Today I'm talking about love of nature. Not love for nature, but love of nature. The way that nature interacts with all of us. In 1972, a book came out that really kind of rocked my world. It was called The Secret Life of Plants. And you may have all have heard about it. It was by Peter Thompson and Christopher Bird. And in that book, they spoke of how plants have emotional responses. And they hooked things up to, hooked philodendron up to
electroencephalograph.
Thank you. I was going to say a polygraph. And then they dropped shrimp in a bottle of boiling water, and the philodendron had a physical reaction, an emotive reaction, an empathetic reaction. And that just really dazzled me, the whole concept of plants having feelings. So I want to share with you an experience that I had. This is not scientific. It is Rebecca-ific. Happened in my life. We often had star pines rather than cut trees. They were living star pines that we would have for Christmas. And so I keep them year to year. And my husband was ill, and so the star pine sort of had been neglected a little bit. And I, one day, picked this pine up, thinking that I would take it to the sink and give it a good watering. And what happened was amazing. That pine initiated love. The love did not come from me. It came from the pine. It was the most powerful interaction that I've ever had. Really. So when I picked the pine up to take it to the sink, it expressed love to me. So Mark Napo, my favorite, has said this: as the earth was begun like a dish breaking, eternity is that scene slowly reversing, and you and I and the things we are drawn to are merely the pieces of God unbreaking back together. I'm going to read that again, because I love it. As the earth was begun like a dish breaking, eternity is that scene slowly reversing, and you and I and the things that we are drawn to are merely the pieces of God unbreaking back together. So you and I and the star pine, the mountains and the trees and the streams, and the essence of nature are God's stuff. We are stardust. And some part of us, some part of the trees and the mountains and the ocean and the sun and the moon and the stars remember from that atomic recollection, an electronic essence that connects us all. And we respond to that, just like that star pine responded to me. It's all God. It's all the essence of all that is. And part of us remember that and resonate with that. It can't be otherwise. it is about love. Because that broke up in the original explosion of creativity did it from a place of love. And the whole of nature is a system of reciprocity. And we forget that. So the sun loves us enough to shine on everything, and the plants accept that light, and through the process of photosynthesis, create oxygen for us. It's a law of reciprocity, the giving and the receiving of love. And somewhere within each one of us, there is that recollection of our original love explosion. You know, I've done a lot of regressive work. I used to be a hypnotherapist, and in that altered state, if I were to ask people to go back to a place where they felt safe and loved and at peace, inevitably, people would take themselves in their recollection back to a place of nature where they felt connected with all that is. For me, it was sitting amid some scrub pinon trees that are ancient. Pinon trees can be 150, maybe 200 years old, and they don't grow old. They don't grow tall. They grow deep. Sitting on a side of a mountain, on a rock, surrounded by scrub piñons, overlooking the Navajo reservation. I remembered that powerful connection of all that is. And I suspect each one of you have had that experience to be in nature and feel the magnitude of its power, of its love and its support. Almost inevitably, that is a spiritual expression and a spiritual experience for people. To feel that love of nature, that connection with all that is, the power of the energy of the divine. There's a new field. It's pretty small, actually. It's called neurobiology. And scientists, more than they were doing in 1972 with The Secret Life of Plants, are exploring plants and exploring their ability for emotional connection. And what they have discovered is that right at the base of many plants' roots, where it's connected from the root to the plant itself, there's something that is very similar to a brain. So now they're discovering the real possibility that plants actually do have brains. There was some devastating event in South Africa where caribou were dying unexpectedly. And scientists were looking, they didn't seem to have any cause for it. But what was really fascinating about it was that the caribou would, on ranges that were, or pieces of land that were overabundant with caribou, they would die. But on other pieces of land where there were not so many caribou and there wasn't a population explosion, they would be fine. And the properties can be right next to each other. And it was a deep puzzlement. What they discovered was there was a plant that during a drought the caribou would feed on. It's kind of like a mimosa plant, sort of like that. And so when there was a drought and the mimosa plant was being threatened with being overgrazed, that its well-being as a community was being threatened, it produced in its leaves more, I forget the name of the chemical, tenacious. So just bear with me about that. We're going to call it tenacious. It would produce more tenacious, which would slow down the feeding process of the stomach juices and poison the caribou. Now that was only happening on ranches or pieces of property or fields that were too densely populated by the caribou. And right next door, that wouldn't be happening. Somehow or other, those trees were able to communicate with each other and say, produce more tenacious. Let's kill off some of these caribous. The plants were having some level of conversation, yet understood. And, we talk about aspen trees that are one unit. A grove of aspen trees is a unit. It's a living body, a whole. And if there's a little sapling that is not being fed or is suffering or is having troubles, that stand of aspen trees somehow or other manages to flow it more nutrients. And the leaves of the larger trees move back so that little struggling sapling gets more nutrition and more sunlight. Because that little sapling is part of the whole. And when it is threatened, then the whole unit is threatened. So the point of all of this, of course, is there's an intelligence that is flowing through all things. And we can think that plants and trees have no intelligence, no heart. And the truth of the matter is, they do. So when we allow ourselves to become aware of that whole, that God essence that moves through all things, then we truly are in spirit and in consciousness. Now I want to share with you a reading that I found from Ram Dass. It says, when you go out into the woods and you look at the trees, you see all these different trees. And some of them are bent, and some of them are straight, and some of them are evergreens, and some of them are whatever. You look at the tree, and you allow it. You see why it is the way it is. You sort of understand that it didn't get enough light, and so it turned that way, and you don't get all emotional about it. You just allow it. You appreciate the tree. The minute you get near humans, you lose all of that. And you are constantly saying, you were too this, or you were too that. And that judgment comes in, and so I practice turning people into trees, which means appreciating them just the way they are. So if we can take our love of nature and our open heart and our spiritual awareness and willingness and treat people in that same way, allowing them to be who they are without judgment or without criticism, just allowing them to be the stunted or brilliant, the struggling or the expansive. Just turning people into trees. Just loving them for their essence, their God dust, their stardust. Knowing fully and completely that they are who we are. They are what we are. That I am they, and they are I. And there is no separation. There's no division. Wouldn't life be delicious if we could walk into this world knowing that we are fully accepted without judgment, just as though us were trees? We look at plants and we look at trees and we don't say, that's a bad one. Because everything we call a weed, someplace else in a different environment, is considered a beautiful plant. It's in our naming that causes weeds to be weeds. It's in our naming and classifying and judging that we call people this or that, right or wrong, good or bad, too tall, too short, too. I call it the terrible twos. How wonderful and lovely and delicious it would be if we could practice what Ram Dass suggests of allowing ourselves to call people trees, to allow them to be trees, to be filled with that same unqualified, limitless love that we have for nature, for a glorious sunset, for the view of a mountaintop, the power and the warmth of a rock. How delicious it would be if we could live our lives that way. From that place of open-hearted willingness. It seems to me that very often plants are a lot more intelligent than humans are. They're much more willing to be part of the whole, and to give without expectation, to be loving in that sort of sense of reciprocity, knowing that as I give, I shall receive. As I love, so am I loved. But knowing that the love must come from the inside, without expectation of it coming from the outside. I think you all are just a beautiful forest. I love you. Namaste. So I would invite the practitioners to stand and join with me as we say our I want to remind you that we do have this box over here, and so you can leave your prayer requests, and these lovely people will hold you in prayer for a week and know the highest and best for you. So I invite you to join with me as I permit myself to become aware of the flicker of stardust that I am. As I allow my heart to be filled with that sense of peace. As I allow myself to view this world with what Carlos Castaneda calls soft eyes. Allowing myself to know that the margins are soft. That you and I are the same. And as I inhale, I am inhaling bits and pieces of you. Stardust. As I inhale, I am inhaling eons of love, comfort, and ease. As I inhale, I allow myself to be filled with limitless kindness, generosity, wellness, peace. I stand in this space, in this place, fully trusting the wisdom of all that is, the essence of the divine that moves through each one of us. Trusting the wisdom of that divine one that knows beyond measure that all is well. No matter how I, in my limitless small humanness, label it or call it. I allow myself to know all is well. Knowing and trusting fully that it cannot be otherwise. So I allow myself to put aside all judgment, all fear, all labeling, and I allow myself to hold my heart open to the way the universe is unfolding. And remembering itself back to the beginning. I allow myself to remember that God is, and God is love. No matter what I call it, no matter what name I give to it, the creative source, Allah, the essence, it, the thing itself, it is so much richer, fuller, and more powerful than any label that I can hang on it. And as that's true for me, I know it is true for each one of us present. We are so much more than any name that we can give ourselves, any label that we can call ourselves, any lack or belief in lack. We are God's stuff, the divine stardust. That's what we are. And I am so grateful for it. And I claim it for each one of us. And I know it is good. And so I say, thank you, Mother, Father, God. And so it is. Another song?